Do you feel emotionally connected to your plants? As if in the process of caring for them, they as well are caring for you? What about planty DIYs and thrifting for plant items? If I have your attention, then the Plants by Wade Lee podcast is for you. Join me, plant friends, as we dig deep and experience the magic of plants. Plant friends, and welcome to the third season of the Plants by Wade Lee podcast. Super excited to have Gray from Urban Gardening with Gray. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you. You live in an urban space and have been gardening for many years in this space, correct?
Yes. And first of all, I just want to say it's a pleasure to be here. Big fan of your show. Yes, I do garden in an urban space, but I make it a point to try to utilize everything I possibly can to make this my urban.
What got you into gardening?
Funny enough, it actually started back with my grandmother. Originally, I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I had to be maybe 10, 11 years old living with my grandmother. And she came to me one day and she said, "Hey, get in the car. We're going to Lowe's. And you don't tell Mama no."
Right.
And she, we went to Lowe's and we picked up some lumber, we picked up some cinder blocks, and we went home and we built our own raised bed. And she picked 3 tomato seedlings. And my brothers and I, we were tasked with growing, not strawberries, tomatoes over the summer. And she said, "This is your summer job. This is what you're doing." And we did. Now, I don't remember exactly what tomatoes my brothers grew, but I remember my first, and it was a Roma. Ever since then, Romas has been my favorite go-to tomato because that was my first tomato.
Yeah.
Biting into that tomato, grown, with these 2 hands, that was the most rewarding feeling I ever had. Ever since then. Now, we're not gonna say exactly how old I am now, but let's just say I've been gardening a lot ever since then. My grandmother, she got me hooked.
That's amazing. And you grew up in Baton Rouge, you said. When did you go to Texas?
Well, I've traveled all over this continent. I lived in Baton Rouge maybe 18 years, and then I was in the United States Army for a while. So I've been in Texas for over 20 years now. And yeah, it's funny because I've been in Texas longer than I've been in Louisiana. So I'm more Texan than I am Louisiana.
And great, thank you so much for your service. I always love to have a vet on the podcast. It means a lot to me. What do you garden now? Is it an array of different kind of vegetables?
Anything I can get my hands on, honestly. I'm one of those like mad scientists in the garden. Like, can I grow this? Can I grow this? I don't know. Challenge accepted. So when it comes to the garden, I maybe have about 50, 60 different plants in there. And then I have my indoor jungle too, because even though they try to separate us, gardeners and plant people, we are cut from the same cloth. I love my ornamentals as well.
Yeah, I love that. That's something that in studying for this podcast with you, I didn't realize that, because you're right. They do like to put that deep line. Oh, you're a gardener. You go on this side. But I love that too, that you are a houseplant guy as well.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm getting my kids into it too, because I just recently picked up Monstera Esqueleto from Costa Farms, and my 6-year-old, he jumped for joy when we opened up the box. He says, "Oh my goodness, it's an Esqueleto!" So I love sharing that passion for plants with my children.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love that he already knows what an Esqueleto is. That's amazing. And shout out to Costa Farms for always showing up with those plants.
Yeah.
I just got the firefly petunias. So they glow in the dark at night, which is super, super cool. I have my grow lights on at night, so it's bright that I never really notice outside if they are glowing, but I need to do that one day and make sure.
And I'm glad you mentioned those, because I want to pick up some of those too, because, with my son being 6 and my daughter being 9, them having those iridescent begonias in their rooms, I think they're going to love them.
Yeah, for sure. What advice would you give to a new grower that wanted to start like a raised bed and they have limited space? What kind of things would you recommend that they start off with?
Well, as far as the raised bed themselves, I actually just went out to Fort Worth to help a cousin put in her first raised bed. I would say don't get something massive. Start small. because unfortunately this hobby can be very expensive if you allow it. So I would recommend getting something small and get you a couple of plants. Start off with some seedlings because you know what? Starting from seed, that's a growing, that's a learning curve in itself. Start off with some seedlings and, grow, put them in the ground. Get you some tomatoes, get you some bell peppers, get you things you like. And you know what? Kill a few plants. For the
Yeah,
next
that's
couple of
very,
years,
very
kill
important.
as many plants as you can because killing plants, people always like, oh no, it's okay. That's where you learn from. I used to be an educator and I always used to tell my students that that's how you learn. You have to fail first before you can actually, practice doesn't make you perfect, but it makes you better. And the better and better you'll become from those mistakes.
Yeah. And you said it earlier, strawberries. You have it on your mind because you are a strawberry guy. This is was really like the first love of gardening for you.
Strawberries, no, tomatoes was that first love. But strawberries, yes, they're always constantly on my mind because my kids love my strawberries. And the fact that they can go out in the garden and handpick their own strawberries, they grow them with me. There's no more rewarding feeling than knowing that they have them right at their fingertips. And it goes back to what I always say, grow what you like to eat. So strawberries, blueberries, any kind of berry, my kids are all about it. They eat berries like it's candy.
And Greg, you have your own podcast as well.
Well, I'm actually working on a couple of things. I have a couple of projects. I have a podcast on my YouTube channel, Growing with Gray, and this is where we focus on beginners, all those trials and errors, and I'm walking beginners through all different various plants. But my friend, Andre the Farmer, and I, as well as Derek, who has also been on your show, The Chocolate Botanist,
Yes.
we're forming something together where we're trying to do a podcast where we're going to be on Instagram on Mondays. Definitely. And what I love about Andre's disposition is that he's one of those trial and error gardeners too.
Yeah.
He just tries things out and see what works.
Yeah. And much like you, he's a great educator. Like he's great, to tune in and listen. Like you don't get bored. He's very open to ask questions, which is super great. What do you think has been your success for gardening and getting to the place that you have with social media and the following? What do you contribute that success to?
Honestly, my success, I really feel like my success is connecting with people because at the end of the day, I am here to help. I remember a while back, I put out a post on Instagram saying, hey, if you have garden questions, ask me and I'll answer them. And one lady commented, she was like, oh my goodness, you are literally answering every single comment in the question. And yes, the question in the comments. I was like, yes. I mean, I'm a Texas Master Gardener. As a Master Gardener, we're a service organization. A lot of people think that Master Gardening means we know how to grow everything, which we don't. We research a lot, but we're really here to serve and help the community. So it's really that connection, that one-on-one, these relationships and these friends that I'm following and finding on the internet. That's the success for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. How long ago did you do the master gardening?
Actually, I didn't pull the trigger on the Master Gardener until last year, 2024.
Wow.
Because a buddy of mine, he was supposed to do the class with me, and then his schedule got busy for whatever reason, but I went ahead and went through with it and I loved it. All the people I met and connected with, going to the expos and so forth. And then of course, working with the ag extension. That's one bit of advice I could give to every listener that listens. Reach out to your local ag extension, no matter what state you're in, because that information they have, that resource is free to you. It's a cornucopia of real provided information, not garden hacks, real science-based information. It's free.
Yeah. And you did yours through the university.
Yeah, because every ag extension is tied to a university. So, for instance, mine would be tied to Texas A&M, but I did it here in the county that I live in with Ellis County.
Awesome, awesome. And then you do a variety of volunteer hours as well as a master.
Correct. As a master gardener, I believe with our state, it's different per state. It's 50 volunteer hours. And so you're doing things in the community. Like, for instance, we have a butterfly garden. We have educational things that we do with the elementary schools, as well as, like periodicals, interviews, newspaper, and so forth.
What do you feel is the most important thing when you start to decide to build your garden? Do you feel like it is the plants or the soil? What do you feel is the best, is the most important when you're starting to garden?
Fantastic question. Soil. I always start with the soil. Soil is a culminating factor for every plant out there. I mean, now granted, of course, there's various options for, growing aquaponics or hydroponically and so forth. But if you're doing any kind of garden, even flower garden, so forth, start with the soil. You have healthy soil, you will have healthy plants. Because what we really need to realize is that when you're creating a garden, you're creating a micro ecosystem. And so by feeding that soil, you're feeding that whole entire ecosystem. So yes,
Yeah.
soil first.
What amendments do you like to add to the soil?
I'm a big fan of slow release fertilizers. So the soil I'm going to go with is going to be a Texas native soil that I have here. I have a partnership with a company that I work with. And as far as my slow releases, it's going to be compost. It's going to be earthworm castings. On occasion, I will use synthetic fertilizers with, which I know a lot of gardeners like, no, don't. It depends on your space and time and availability. There's nothing wrong with synthetics, but I use them sparingly because I have a long growing season down here in Texas. I can go all the way to November growing.
Yeah.
So I can go with the slow releases and it'll work great for me. But on the hindsight of that, if someone was like, for instance, living in Alaska, slow releases might not work for them because they have very short window. So, so yes, I am a firm believer in slow release for me, but that's for my growing situation.
Yeah, and you compost yourself.
I do. I do composting, and I compost directly in my beds, and I compost directly in my traditional rows. I actually place a plastic bin directly into the ground that has perforated holes, kind of like a milk crate, and I compost right in place, allowing those worms to pass the compost throughout the rest of the.
Wow, that is awesome. Do you have videos showing?
I do. I do have several videos on Instagram and TikTok showing off
Yeah,
the
'cause I'm
compost system.
sure viewers would love to see. I know personally, I would love to see that. That's amazing. So you literally like dig up the hole, put the bin in there, and then put the compost in there, and then you let the worms really do the work.
Yeah, well, cause see, for me, I'm constantly on the go. I actually, besides gardening, I have multiple businesses that I run as well. So I'm a daily gardener. I'm literally out in my garden every day. And so since my time is limited, I make sure that I can just toss my compost in there, give it a quick turn, and keep on moving. So doing piles and such, I am married, and my wife will not let me have a huge, massive compost pile in my backyard.
Yeah.
So this is nice and neat, and plus it kind of keeps the critters away. And then plus by taking those baskets from, donations from my local convenience store, I'm stopping them from going into a landfill and staying sustainable.
Yeah, that's so true. Do you have any projects that you're working on that you're excited to talk about? You
Yes, in May, end of May, May 31st, I will be down in PlantCon again, PlantCon Houston. I'm excited to be there. I'll have a bunch of plants with me and, of course, answering garden questions. And I may be doing a plant propagation class again. We just haven't solidified exactly what time frames. But yes, I'll be down in Houston for May 31st. And also there's a Dallas PlantCon that's coming up in October. I'll be there for that. And then I can let you know this is an exclusive. I'm working with Epic Gardening, so Kevin and the team and Jock and so forth. We're working on possibly creating a new project in the near future. We don't have an exact date yet, but we are hard at work trying to develop a new product.
That's awesome. A new product. That's very, very cool. We love to hear that. I love to see my fellow gardeners growing and succeeding. It's so awesome. And as a community, like I think it's so cool that like you said, you're tied with Derek and Andre, and it's just such a eclectic group of people, like from all around the world, but that common love of plants and growing is so special, and I love that we can all share that. And you see that like going to the plant shows when there's thousands and thousands of people so excited to see each other and take pictures. I mean, I think I took more pictures with people than anything that I did at
Same here.
PlantCon, which was so awesome. Especially
Definitely.
meeting the people that you slide into each other's DMs all the time, asking questions and chatting each other up. So it's just a really, really cool community.
Yes, the
And talking
people.
about community, you built that community locally with the plant community where you live.
Yes, actually I am. I have a partnership with Texas Tree Farms, and we are going to be hosting gardening classes really soon. We haven't exactly set up a date yet, but it's going to be on Saturdays, and it's going to be in the morning, but we're going to be doing gardening classes where people can come by, they can ask their garden questions. But let's face it, not everyone's on the internet. And so for those people who are not, on the different platforms, they can come in person and learn from me directly.
Yeah. That's great. When did you decide to pick up the phone and record or the camera while you were gardening? Like you have this love for gardening and then you're like, I'm just going to film myself. How
You
did
know,
that start?
it's funny you mentioned that. This was actually from a massive fail. I was growing a bunch of squash and zucchini, and I was out there in the garden, and squash vine borers just destroyed me. And I had all these dilapidated, failing plants. That was when I picked up the camera because I was like, people need to see this. And so from there, I just kept running. And I have to give all credit where credit is due. The reason why my brand is so successful is actually all on the strength of my wife. She's actually the backbone of this business because she gives me direction. She tells me, okay, you need to do this. Why don't you say this and so forth. She really is the planning behind it. But yeah, it started with a failure, the massive death of all of my squash and zucchini.
Yeah. I love that because that's like you said, that's how you learn. No other way to connect with people than to show failure in something because everyone can relate to like starting something and not really having it go the way that they want. Does your wife garden with you as well?
She actually is not into gardening, but she loves the results and she loves the aesthetic. For instance, when I'm propagating all of my plants and so forth, she loves the beauty because she always says that, oh, I have a black thumb, and I always correct her, no, you just haven't met the right plant for you. That's all. But she's always, anytime I'm bringing new house plant babies in the house, she's like, oh, is that another plant? I was like, yes. Her desk at school, she's a school teacher. She's been teaching for 18 years. It's full of plants that I've propagated.
That's so cool. I'm sure the kids love that too as well at work. What is your favorite house plant?
My favorite changes every season. It really does. But currently, my favorite is my Esquilito because the Esquilito with the fenestrations, I mean, how can you not love these fenestrations? So
Yeah,
this is my current joy. Last year was my Thai constellation, but I still love her too. She's back here.
yeah, that's beautiful.
Thank
You
you.
know how the monsteras will grow and the pothos will grow in Florida on trees with the big jungle leaves? Will they do that in Texas as well?
Unfortunately not because of our winters. Our
Yeah,
winters will completely destroy. I wanted to actually try to test one out in my microclimate. Because now this is one thing I always talk about too. Is like, you do have to take into consideration microclimates. Now I have an expansive tree canopy. So I want to say, and plus I have a creek that runs behind my backyard. With the combination of that creek and that canopy, I'm wondering if I can keep the soil warm enough to be able to allow a monstera to survive, but it truly is a gamble because I mean we can get down to 15 degrees. I mean, a couple of years ago we got down to 5 degrees. So that's the challenge when trying to grow those tropical.
yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, even here, because I'm in Northeast Florida, so I'm in Jacksonville. You know,
Okay.
you go an hour south and you could do it no problem, towards like Apopka and Orlando. But here too, I struggle sometimes. But they always pop back up. They'll dead off. All my fiddle leaf figs will dead off. All the leaves will fall, but they do come back. So yeah, I've been wondering that. I meant to ask Destin that because I was talking to him and he's in Texas as well. So I was like,
Yeah.
I was wondering if that is something that you could do.
Now Destin is further south out in Houston. So, Texas Garden got Destin. Yeah, he
Yeah,
might
yeah.
be able to do it here, but I know it wouldn't be a shot here. I'm in Dallas, so I'm about 4.5 hours north of him. So,
North.
I mean, I'm honestly about maybe 2 hours away from Oklahoma.
Wow. Oh yeah. So it does. And will it freeze like at weeks at time or?
Well, that's the interesting thing. Here, we only get like a real hard freeze like late January. I mean, December, we've had like 80-degree Decembers where we're outside for Christmas in shorts.
Yeah.
Like towards the tail end of our winter is going to be like January, mid-February. Because a couple of years ago, we had our snowpocalypse where it was a week where we had just all this snow. All of our services shut down because we're not built for that. We don't have the infrastructure for it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. But a lot of these fruits and vegetables, they love that freeze. Garlic really likes to be put in that cold before it comes up. What do you find to be your easiest crop to grow where you are?
Strawberries. Strawberries, because being a perennial, liking to go dormant during the winter months. Strawberries, I mean, we currently have about 12 strawberry patches because the kids love them so much. So they do really well here. Along with that, chives and garlics do really well just because of that change in temperature and that cold stratification.
What what is something that um, you talked about the squash and the worms in the beginning, but what is something else that you were really excited to grow? You really had great hopes, and you kind of learned a big lesson through a failure of a crop.
Well, this one comes from an ambitious gardening friend of mine who just wants to grow everything. And I'm more research based, but this was one time that I did not research. It was actually moringa. He came to me and he was like, "Hey man, I got some moringa seeds. Do you want to grow them?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, let's go for it." I know they can't handle our winters, so I'm going to keep mine in pots. But what I did not realize is that moringa grows insanely fast. If I was to place it in soil, we're talking about 11 feet of growth in 1 year. But given our climate out here in Dallas, they will die off in this winter because they can't handle anything like less than 40 degrees or so, really.
Yeah,
And so I have to keep mine in pots, and that's fine. And I have to prune them a lot because I have to bring them in during winter. So that was one of those moments where I was like, I should have researched this a little bit more, but it's okay.
yeah. Have you done loofah before?
Have I done what's that?
The loofah?
Loofah? No, I haven't grown loofah. I mean, I'm familiar with how to grow it, but it's just, I don't see a need for it because this goes back to grow what you eat, grow what you use, you need. And loofah isn't really something that I really see any benefit for me, so I don't really grow it. I know Andre does loofah though.
He does. Yeah, I mean, I know that you need quite a bit of space to do it because they do grow so big, but that's one thing that I was looking at maybe trying this year. I still have all of my seeds in a bag. We had this TikTok like happy hour during PlantCon, and I got a bag of like the TikTok seeds that are like 30,000 seeds. Yeah, it's insane. I'm like, the guy was like, yeah, gardeners buy them and people who are ready for the apocalypse, that are getting ready for the end of the world. Those are the people that buy these seeds. I think it's crazy. But I haven't started any seeds. When you do your garden, do you plant right into the garden or do you start with seedlings? Can't hear you.
Yes, it depends on the plant itself. Because like for instance, out here in North Texas, anything over 90 degrees, our tomatoes will stop producing. So we kind of have to get a jump on them. So I'll start my tomatoes like maybe 10 to 8 weeks out ahead of time, just because I know that I have a very short window. Because once we start getting towards the tail end of May, when we start getting those 100-degree temperatures, no more tomatoes. So I try to get as
Yeah.
many as I can in early spring. But
And
it depends, because like for instance, like nasturtiums don't like their roots disturbed, so I direct sow those. Okra, I direct sow. Peas, corn, so forth. Those I'll direct. Even my sunflowers. Anything that doesn't like their root system disturbed, I'll just direct sow right out in the soil.
yeah. And how do you learn what doesn't like their root system disturbed? Just through learning?
Research, research,
Yeah.
research, research. Now, I
Yeah.
will say that I have made that failure before with peas. I got so excited that my peas were doing so well, and I started them indoors. Like, oh, wait a minute, that's right, they're nitrogen fixers. They don't like their roots disturbed. So that was a fail. But I'm an honest gardener. I show people like, hey, yeah, this was a bad idea. But guess
Yeah.
what? Peas do so well here. I'm still going to direct sow some, and they're still going to be great.
Yeah, that's awesome. What does your setup look like? You use grow lights and misters when you're seeding, or do you just
Well,
you
I
know?
can actually. Do you mind if I show you?
No, I would love to. I'd love to see it.
So this is actually a repurposed cabinet that I built for my wife several years ago. She no longer needed. So I lined the cabinet with aluminum foil to try to get as much redirection of light as possible. And so this is my setup here. I have a lot of bottom trays, and I water from the bottom. And these are some more seedlings that I have coming in. I have my my watermelons coming in here. I have a couple of flat of onions, and then I have some leggy tomatoes that's coming up here. So I might have to deep plant those.
That's amazing. What an awesome setup.
Thank
And
you.
and what exactly does the aluminum foil do?
It just, for me, it helps kind of redirect some of that light. So since that space, I only have like 2 grow lights in there. So I try to get as much light bouncing around there as possible. So this is based off of a lot of like the Egyptian pyramids, right? How they would redirect light throughout the pyramids to try to get as much light to go through those pyramids as possible. So that's where I came up with that idea. No one showed me. I just said, you know what? I know that aluminum foil is reflective. So yes, let's use this as a reflective property to try to stop the legginess that happens.
Yeah, and I'm sure that it keeps it warmer in there as well. It's like
Yes,
a
warmer
conductor
and
of heat.
humid.
Yeah, and
Humid as
humid.
well.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's so cool. I love that. That's a really cool hack. What other talking about hacks? Like, what are some of your other favorite like gardening hacks that you've come up with that you found to be useful for you?
Well, for instance, the 5 gallon bucket potato system. This is actually something I filmed a while back. And essentially, you just take 2 5 gallon buckets and you cut holes out of your top bucket, your first bucket. And I use the jigsaw to do it. And this will allow you, when you place it in your second bucket, you'll be able to easily harvest your potatoes by just pulling the buckets apart. Now, the reason why I came up with this system is because a lot of the people who follow me are living in apartments or in condos and so forth. So they have very limited space. And using this 5 gallon bucket method, you can still grow potatoes without having a massive 1 acre property. But now there is a caveat because potatoes grow to their surface area for the most part. So when you're doing the 5 gallon bucket method, your potatoes are going to be smaller. So we're talking about like small roasting potatoes. But it's still potatoes nonetheless.
Right, right. Still potatoes nonetheless. Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of gardeners on Instagram growing out of like those gardening bags, and it's such a great option when you are in like an apartment or have very limited space.
Definitely. Yeah, I love grow bags because, the one thing, I have ADHD. So I'm constantly changing
What
my
gardener
garden.
doesn't?
What gardener does it, right? So I'm constantly changing out my gardening layout. So I will, change every season. And by having those grow bags, I can mix and match. Or if I'm companion planting, say I have marigolds growing in one grow bag and I need them to be closer to another plant so that they can stop all of the, nematodes in the soil and so forth, or deer or rabbit and so forth. So it
Yeah,
gives me that flexibility to move around.
yeah. And talking about that, what do you do as far as pest control? Do you have like some organic items that you use, or is there like a favorite thing that you use to deal with the pests?
Yes, companion planting. And that's
Yeah,
one thing that I really attribute to my master gardeners because when I really started to learn more with the master gardeners, I learned so much about companion planting. And it's my go-to now. I mean, when anyone asks me any questions about, hey, I got this pest or that pest, more than likely I'm going to reference companion planting. But now
yeah,
there is a caveat to that because while we're gardeners growing in our backyards or growing in community gardens and so forth, it makes sense for us to be able to companion planting. This is not for large scale farming because if we're growing, 5 acres worth of tomatoes, it doesn't make sense to interplant basil along with it because a harvester won't be able to differentiate which is which. But for
right.
a gardener, companion planting is my clutch.
Yeah, and that also is great for the soil, correct? Like the different plants that are growing, and the
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, because they totally can. Because, I mean, depending on what you're planting, like for instance, like I said, marigolds, right? If you're growing, let's say hypothetically, you're growing potatoes in a grow bag. And then next season you say, you know what, I want to grow some strawberries. Well, you can't because nematodes actually thrive in the soil with potatoes. And those same nematodes, if you wouldn't plant strawberries right after it, they would destroy your strawberry plants. But if you plant marigolds along with those strawberries, they would drive the nematodes right out of the soil. Same goes with chives. So it's that whole, and so it's making the soil better. Plus, it's aerating and allowing more pockets of air to get through, so that the roots can develop more.
Yeah, that's amazing. Do you as well do any like like flower bed gardening?
Yes, yes. I have cemetery irises as well as purple irises growing out in the front. Because it's funny, when I first started growing, I was like, oh, I'm just growing these flowers for the pollinators, and I'm like, no, you know what? I like flowers. So yes, zinnias, cosmos, marigolds. I mean, of course, they're serving dual purposes, but sometimes just
Yeah,
like my stargazer lilies and so forth. If my daughter's with me and we're out shopping and she sees a flower she likes, I'm like, get it.
you'll
We're
get
planting
it.
it.
Yeah, you're a good dad. That's very sweet. Do you do any of these flowers with seeds? Have
Some
you?
I do.
Yeah,
It,
yeah.
it
I had
depends.
great. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just saying it depends because, like, for instance, it depends. Like your lilies, the lilies are going to grow from bulbs, so you have to find the bulbs for those.
Right,
But a
right.
lot, I will start from bulbs. I try not to go with fully developed plants because for me, gardening is all about that journey. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I this year had done cosmos and zinnias for the garden at work through seed, and it's just such a, and because you're a gardener, like it's just like every time I walk past and I see those big, I mean they're huge right now. They haven't started to flower yet, but those zinnias are 2-3 feet, and I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
created this with a little seed and water. This is amazing,
Oh
so
yeah.
amazing. Yeah,
Oh yeah, just like sunflowers, right? I grow sunflowers a lot as well, and one of my favorite sunflowers is the Auricera sunflower. Sunflower will get 12 feet tall, and I just love seeing that exponential growth. I
yeah,
love big leaves.
yeah. Me too. That's so awesome. A funny story. I was gardening at work a few months, like a month ago, and this gentleman had come and said, "Oh, I have something for you," and I wanted to ask you if you had ever heard of this. He said that where he lives in New York, he has grown the largest pumpkins, the largest sunflowers, because of magnetizing the seeds. Have you heard this? So
No.
he runs to his van and grabs two bags. One, there's a big plus, and one, there's a big minus. And it was like the exact same plants, like seedlings. So he gave them to me. I've been growing them, but they don't seem any different than uh, any other time that I've grown it. But we'll see. But he supposedly said that, and I don't know the science behind it. That's why I'm like, asking everyone that I know who's a gardener, been asking. So I'm like, do you know this? Do you know this? And it's funny because he's like, I'm going to change the world with this technology, but I don't know. I don't even know how you would do that.
And and this, I think this would be a great question with Derek because him being a botanist in his botanist background. But from what I know of plant science, this more sounds like electroculture. And, there's nothing to prove that electroculture, that
Works.
copper and the wiring and magnetic fields. And in my other profession, I'm actually an automotive mechanic and I used to be a mechanical engineer. But there's nothing to suggest that by placing a magnetic field over a seed is going to magnetize it. There's no metal properties inside of a seed.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, and that's why I'm just like mind blown. Like, what? I, what just happened? Like when he left, I had all these seeds, and I'm like, what? Okay, I guess I'm just gonna come home and plant them. But they're growing,
There you go.
and they are large right now. But you know, some of them could just be large seeds. I don't know. So that's
Yeah.
funny.
And plus,
I
it's
will
free
ask
seed.
Derek though. Yeah. Yeah, free seeds, exactly. And he gave me like 20 packs. So, but two, like two of each, one positive and one negative. So, and he's like, grow them together. So interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. That one. I don't know. That one seems like a stretch to me.
Yeah. Um, talking, in bringing Derek back up, he's definitely the myth buster. Is there any things that you've tried that you've heard these, weird things to try to do in your garden that you've tried to do yourself and was like, no, this is definitely not not something that works.
Well, there's there's an old myth that I used to believe for the longest time. And it wasn't until I started studying more and researching more into it and realized that it really had no validity. And I'm going to grab a prop for this.
Okay, awesome.
This is a nursery pot, right? For the longest time in both the ornamental planting community as well as the container garden community, we've been told that if we add rocks to the bottom of the container, that will help it so that the soil can drain. But this is not true. What actually ends up happening is when you add that first layer of rock down to your soil, all you're doing is raising the bottom of the pot. Because what happens is when you have your rocks down at the bottom, you have larger structures, right? And then in your soil, you have smaller structures. So when you pass that water through, you think, oh, now because the rocks are there, oh, it'll just pass through easily. No. What happens is it actually slows down the water. So you're creating a pool of water right at the bottom of your container. So essentially you're opening up yourself for the conditions for root rot because you have this soggy soil that's sitting on the top of all your rock. So that's one that I would say that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
yeah, because we always do it. Well, because we always do it to help fill, to help fill so you don't have to use so much soil, but also for the idea of that. And that makes a lot of sense that would just kind of pool right there, right at that bottom.
That's now, an alternative, if you're wanting to have more water retention in your soil, I mean, adding things like mulch or sphagnum moss or even like your Spanish moss, because I know you out there in Jacksonville, you guys get some Spanish moss growing on trees, right?
A lot of Spanish moss, yeah.
So take some of that Spanish moss, and that can act as that sponge, but the water will still be able to pass through it. It's not creating that. What is it called? It's actually a term for it. It's called raising the water table. That's essentially what you're doing. You're raising the water table. But if you do with something that actually soaks up water, like your moss and like your mulch and so forth, that can work for you.
That's awesome.
That's
a great hack too. Who do you feel are your mentors or have been your mentors in this journey through your garden journey?
My mentor is the lady who got me started, my grandmother. She's no longer with us, but she was one of those true do-it-yourself type of women. I mean, honestly, a lot of tools that I have now at my home, maintaining my own home and maintaining my garden, came from her because she didn't let anything stop her. When she wanted to learn how to do something, she just went out there and did it until she got it right. And so I picked up a lot of those traits from her. It's funny because my mother even tells me, she was like, yeah, no, you're your mama's child because you're not my child.
Yeah. And did your mom garden?
She keeps a couple of ornamental plants. I'm bringing her over more to the ornamental world. So she has a couple of monsteras and such, but not so much.
But not like your grandma. Yeah.
Yeah, not like my
That's so cool. And what kind of things did your grandma grow? Other than tomatoes, like she did tomatoes, but she did an array of different vegetables as well.
Yeah, she kept it basic with her annual. So she would do, cucumbers, tomatoes, and so forth, mustard greens and collard greens and so forth. And being there in Louisiana and having that native black soil that we would have down in Louisiana, like truly in Louisiana, you can go as a gardening novice, stick a seed in the soil, and it's going to grow for you because that soil is so rich. So yeah, she kept it pretty basic with the annuals.
Yeah. And then she cook it all.
Exactly.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm interested in.
Right up.
I love some fresh greens. I was so proud of myself when I did my first garden 2 summers ago. I was living by the beach too, so I didn't know, but the bok choy, lettuce, all of those things did really, really great, even with like the salty air. But there is nothing like just ripping out some fresh greens and cooking them up. Oh my gosh.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Like one of my favorites out here in Texas right now is a Chinese amaranth. One, I love it because it's a fantastic pop of color to your garden. So it's a nice red color. And then plus the taste. The flavor profile kind of has like a nutty taste to it. So if you take some of that red amaranth and say you're sauteing down a little bit of spinach, throw that red amaranth in there, or maybe even some Swiss chard, and you got a nice complex amount of flavors up in there.
That's amazing. Um, and talking about that, do you find yourself, now that you've been doing this a while, do you find yourself finding new varieties of vegetables and things that you're like, wow, I've never even done this or heard of this. That's also very cool too, right?
Yes, going out to Andre's. When I went to Orlando and I went to Andre's permaculture for food forest, I mean, there's so many tropical things and Caribbean things that he's growing that I've never even heard of before. I was like, oh my goodness, what is this? And that's what I love about him being my friend and us having our gardening community. Back here, I have a sign that says Better Gardener. We have an online gardening class that we have members from all over the world, and they come in and do weekly, gardening classes with us. But that's what I love about him and the community is because you have all of these different perspectives coming together and sharing ideas. It's like we're creating like a collective, like a
Yeah.
like a data bank.
Yeah, yeah. And especially today, in today's world, that's what we need, the collective and community to encourage each other, to grow. And, there is nothing like having your own food forest in your backyard. Like you're not dealing with the hormones and the pesticides that come from, going to your local grocery store even.
Right. Right. And then another point too, and I'm glad you mentioned that. There's only so many things that's available at a grocery store. Because at a grocery store, let's face it, they're a business. And they sell what travels well, what will sit on a shelf well. So there's varieties of strawberries that you've never even tasted. Like wild strawberries, by far are the best strawberries there are. They have so much flavor, but they don't travel well. They ripen really fast. Or
Yeah.
wild blackberries. So when you start getting into that gardening world and you're like, oh my goodness, there's all of these different things that I can grow and taste that I never even knew existed because they're not at my local market.
Yeah. Great. Where can everyone find your work on social media? You have a YouTube where you have long form videos.
Yes, I'm also on Instagram. Everything on every platform is all the same name, Urban Gardening with Gray. On Instagram, TikTok. I'm on Lemonade as well. I just kind of post a couple of pictures, and Facebook as well. And then, of course, our online school, Better Gardener. And Better Gardener is through school.com/Better Gardener.
Okay, awesome. And is there a fee to join that?
It is a paid subscription, but it's $10 a month. And that's really just to run the maintenance for the website because it does
Yeah.
cost us to run the maintenance of the website.
Yeah.
But if you sign up for a year, it's actually half the price at only $60 a year.
Okay, awesome. And then what do you get when you join that?
You get access to all of the articles that we post all week long. We're constantly posting articles, tips. Sometimes I'll pull data from like the agricultural websites where I can give you the NPK breakdown on different organic fertilizers like your bone meal and so forth. And then we do weekly calls. So on Thursdays is when I host my call at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And then Andre does his at Sunday at 7 p.m. as well. But we're also, our members actually host their own calls as well. We have a member that has an ornamental call. It's called The Beauty of Ornamentals. And we just talk about our ornamental plants on about every other Monday or so, once a month. Then we have a Bahamian chef, Chef V. She's amazing. She hosts her own garden to table calls where we just talk about different recipes that we can use from what we grow in our garden.
That is so awesome. And these are all just members collectively coming on this in this classroom forum and learning from each other. That's so amazing. That is
And
so
then the cool
awesome.
thing about it is that we talk at least 2 to 3 times a week. So I don't even consider them like members of the community. Like these people are my friend. When I came to Orlando, a lot of our members were there. We just all embraced each other. Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's so cool. So awesome. Great. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. I would love to do a duo thing, even a triple thing with Derek too one time, and get Andre on here with you as well, because I know that you all have like a wealth of information that you share, and I'm super excited to share with the viewers too that they can get into these classrooms and learn more from you all as well.
Yes, I would
Thank-
love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me. It was truly an honor.